Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Red Bra Project. I'm Renee here, and my brilliant and beautiful co-host, Shauna, isn't able to make it today, but we are so excited to introduce to you our guests for our Woman Crush Wednesday. Actually, Woman Crush every day. Who am I kidding? But I am here with the amazing Jennifer Myers, and a quick shout out to one of our former Red Bra guests, Sajal Thacker, for introducing us and connecting us to other like-minded, amazing women. Jen has a story today. She's going to share some of her own personal story, but she's an author, a speaker, an advocate, and she is just out there pouring so much good into the world, and we're so excited to get to know you better. Welcome to the Red Bra Project, Jen.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. We're so excited to dig in and learn more about your story and just share it with all of our readers, because I think it's going to just instill so much inspiration. I mean, I feel like you are a walking inspiration literally daily. So how about you tell us a little bit about where you're joining us from today and a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm in San Diego, California, and
Beautiful, sunny San Diego.
I know, I love it here. I was actually born in Ohio, and just I love Ohio. I went to Ohio State. I grew up on a farm. My dad was a farmer. I had a great childhood. Went to college. I was a dance major. I love dancing, and then I moved to Chicago, where I began a career dancing and choreographing. And just briefly, I'll say at a certain point, my sorority sister had introduced me to a man. She said he was a great guy. And when I met him, we quickly got involved. And then soon after, I found out that he was actually running a marijuana trafficking operation. So I made a really poor choice at some point to stay with him. And then I got involved. And so I engaged in this for about 10 years. Maybe 8 to 10 years, until I was arrested by the federal government. And after a long 2.5 years, was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. And I served 17 months in federal prison Camp Alderson. So that is my story, which has created the whole next decade and a half of my life afterwards.
Amazing. Amazing how we get to sit here and learn about your experience and hear about it and what you're doing with those choices. And I mean, we all know it, and especially younger growing up. And first of all, Ohio girls on this side too, Shauna and I. So we're excited to be with our fellow Midwestern gal today. But Chicago is an amazing city. And I mean, going to school for dance, I mean, literally, it just sounds like this is, someone's American dream, to go to school, go and dance, and, dance your soul out, dance your heart out. And I think that you're a perfect example of talking about how all of our choices have ripple effects, and before you know it, they can spiral out of control. So to kind of go back a little bit to before you met this man and everything like that, were you happy with what you were doing and everything? What was your future look in your mind looking like at that point?
Yeah, I was happy. I mean, the thing is, being a modern dancer, it doesn't make a lot of money, if any money at all. It's a tough life, but I loved to dance. I love to perform. I love to choreograph. And when I was in Chicago, I think if anything, I was struggling in relationships. That had always been a struggle for me with men. But I was dancing at night, rehearsing at night, working a full-time job during the day. And then, we would rehearse for, week after week after week for 6 weeks until we would perform for 2 nights. So, and we were performing all over at different universities. I was in smaller dance companies, a pickup dancer. But the money was hard. The struggle of living that life was a little hard for me. So when I met this man, he lived a different lifestyle, and I didn't even knew that I wanted that lifestyle until I got a glimpse of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, especially early 20s. You're loving what you're doing. You don't even realize you were missing anything. Yeah, and then your world opens up to this whole other universe.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I want to say one more thing on that. It's interesting that you said missing something, because I feel like when I met this guy, his name was Dale. I started to feel like there was something wrong with me in my life. Like, well, what's missing? Like, how can I get this too? You know, I didn't plan my life for this. So yeah, that's sort of how it happened.
Yeah. And I mean, especially when you're younger and you're figuring it out and you're really trying to figure out, I know I'm going after this, these are my goals, but you know, I'm open to opportunity. I'm open to change. I'm open to seeing the other doors as well. It can be really tough to make those decisions and, you know, figure out if you're making the right ones or not. Okay. So picking kind of back up, you met Dale and you guys had a romantic relationship and, you know, one thing led to another. So what can you go back to when you discovered what he was doing, or trafficking marijuana and things? What was your initial kind of feeling and response, and kind of how'd you go from that to getting involved?
Well, it's so interesting. I write about this because I wrote my book and had it published. And I remember specifically the night he told me, and we were sitting on the edge of Lake Michigan, and it was night, and the moon was shining. And remember, our feet were in the water, and I was feeling really close to him. And he sort of turned to me and he said, Jen, I have something that I need to tell you. And I'm like, okay. And he said, I'm running a marijuana trafficking operation. And he said, the Mexicans have taken somebody's son, kidnapped him. They're holding him hostage across the border. We owe them money. And I have 3 days to get this amount of cash. And of course, I was stunned. I don't know, for me at that point, I was, you know, sometimes I'd smoke marijuana. I didn't think it was hurting anybody, that big of a deal. And I think I got hooked into because he was sitting here and he was a really good guy. He really was, like, everybody liked him and I felt safe with him. So when he told me this person who felt safe to me, I just wanted to, like, sort of take care of him. Like, oh, you're going to be okay. And I didn't leave.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, other than that, I just didn't leave. So that's that night.
Were you afraid for his life and for your life and just what those words meant to you? I mean, when you look back and you say those words now, is it kind of one of those things where you're like, am I dreaming this? Do I know how big those words mean?
Yeah, I did not. I mean, I always was a little bit naive, rosy glasses on a little bit, you know, even though, you know, I also could be really realistic. I had no idea what that really meant. And it didn't feel real in a sense. So no, I did not value the gravity of the situation. I didn't respect it. And that's the energy that I led with. I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I was in danger. I didn't feel like he was in danger. Isn't that weird? But I was 24.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, and we can all think about some of the things we did in our 20s and some things we, you know, may or may not want to talk about, but some things you do look back and, you know, younger or even in your 30s, and you're like, I don't know what I was thinking, you know, so we all have those moments.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think you asked, how did I get involved?
Yeah.
And, you know, it wasn't really too long after that. I would say a few months later, now, you know, I rented a loft in Chicago with Dale. I'm traveling a lot. I'm meeting, you know, it was a higher life. It was a high lifestyle. And I remember at one point, I was back in Ohio with him and I knew I was unhappy. We were visiting my parents before Christmas and I realized that I wasn't for sure if I was really in love with him. And yet at the same time, I felt trapped because I was afraid if I left him, then what would happen to me in my life? Like, how do I go back to what I was living before? So the truth is, to claim some sense of empowerment for myself and freedom from a man, I said, I want to get involved. And literally, I take 100% responsibility for it. I asked to get involved and I wanted to. I wanted to make my own money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing that part and being so vulnerable. And I mean, that's, you know, especially, it's not always easy to admit some of your mistakes and even huge mistakes, but I mean, there's so much power in that, in stating that you knew what you wanted and you thought you knew how to get it by making that choice and being in that almost empowering situation. I mean, that's huge, to be responsible for that kind of money and drugs and then, you know, kind of have this secretive life. So you got involved. Did your loved ones know, or is it something you kept to yourself? And okay.
Yeah. My parents never knew. I mean, over the course of the years, they started wondering, but sadly, I always lied to them. I didn't want to involve, if I involved anybody, there was a risk that of more consequences for other people. Who I did tell were my close friends. I couldn't have close friendships without them knowing, because I was moving around a lot and traveling, and the lying is too uncomfortable. And creates too many walls. So some of my close friends knew, and they were dancers too, artists, some of them, and they were just like, "Go, Jen! You're making good money. It's marijuana." They didn't see the consequences either.
Right. Yeah. And so you have these other peers that are almost, I mean, admiring what you're doing and of course supporting you. And that is even fueling more empowering of the feelings you feel. And so, I mean, we've read a little bit about it, but I mean, you literally had said at one point you were storing cash or shoe boxes full of cash underneath your bed. And I mean, that sounds like a movie.
Yeah, at a certain point, it felt like it. I mean, literally, the first load I took with Dale across Sedona was only 200 pounds. And that was, just to see how I would handle the stress, which I am pretty good under pressure. So it worked for me. And plus, I didn't look like I would do something like that. So it made me even more valuable as a driver. So we would drive together. And then I started driving with other people. At first, then we would drive like 700 pounds in the back of a van that had no seats in it with hockey bags. And then it went to, pulling U-Hauls. And then it went to, creating a race car caravan where we were a race car team with 2 double dually trucks and a race car trailer filled with 9,000 pounds of pot. Like it got pretty big. And the bigger it got, the more out of hand it felt, because now more people were involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there a sense of kind of thrill and excitement and adrenaline that you were becoming addicted to?
Of course. Yeah. It's interesting because my entire life, I had started this, I don't know if this makes sense, but, I was on a gymnastics team. I loved to perform. I loved the thrill. I loved the risk. And for some reason, this good girl persona, because that's what I was in high school. If you want to talk about somebody falling, the least person that somebody would imagine from my small hometown doing this, then it probably would have been me. I mean, I was captain of my cheerleading squad, the whole thing. So it was a thrill. And yeah, I admit there's an addiction in that. And, yeah, storing the cash. I mean, I used to fly cash back and, see, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. Cash is addicting. Seeing cash is a thrill. And yes.
100%. And I mean, again, you're young, you've come from working your tail off, you understand, hard work, ethics, morals, all of that. It sounds like you've had a very supportive family and friends, but you got a little taste and nobody was getting caught for years. And so of course you keep growing and testing the waters and pushing your comfort zone.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because just like you said, nobody was getting caught. And, the truth is now, everybody gets caught in the end, because it's very rare that anybody would stop doing that unless they were forced to stop. It's just the way it works.
Yeah, that is a great point. That's an excellent point. Okay, so tell me a little bit about, I guess, when you had a feeling things weren't going to keep working out the way you've known.
Well, I want to share one more piece that you probably don't know, but just so you know, when I was doing the trafficking and, for a while I was, spending my money on designer clothes and nice places to live and traveling and all of these things. But at a certain point, my dancing partner, Jillian, died. And that was a big turning point in my life. I was now 26. She had an aneurysm, died suddenly. And that deeply impacted me. And it actually took me on a whole spiritual search. All my passion for dance, I stopped dancing and directly went to India to see gurus. I was spending all my cash on traveling to finance my spiritual search. So that's sort of interesting that I did that. And that completely changed my life. So during that time, I'd moved to San Diego for a spiritual community, and off and on, I was trying to get out of the trafficking. And at a certain point, a few times I did stop. I sold all my stuff and I'm like, I'm going to India and I'm just going to travel around and with this guru. Well, that's a whole different story. But so when I didn't get out, I wasn't driving as much because now an Atlas van truck was driving the drugs. But I got a call from Dale, and he said, Jen, just rent a storage unit for us. And so I was going to go to Tucson, rent a storage unit in my name, and they would, the Mexicans would pick the boxes of marijuana up, store them temporarily in the unit just for a couple hours, and then the Atlas van truck would take it. Well, I did that twice. And the second time I got a call from Dale, 2 days later, he said somebody, when they went to drop the load off, the house was raided. The SWAT team, the DEA, and somebody was arrested. And I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And for 3 months, I didn't know what to do until I was arrested.
Oh my goodness. So first of all, back to your dance partner passing away. That is such a crucial part of your story, and I'm so glad you shared it. Thank you. And I'm so sorry to hear that. And in the middle of all of this, and then, yeah, I mean, did you kind of alluded to it, but it felt like you kind of pulled away from dance a little bit to try and reflect.
Oh, 110%. I mean, I literally only performed once after that. Jolynn was somebody that, you know, there's some people on this earth who feel like they have one foot in on earth and the rest in heaven or in another universe. And she was always like that. And so I had sort of taken on the role of feeling responsible for making sure she was okay. Mm-hmm. So I would say probably an unhealthy attachment towards her, as much as I cared about her. And so when she died, I felt responsible. Which mimics my mom being sick when I was younger. And because of that, you know, it deeply impacted me. And I think I equated dance with death. And literally, I just stopped dancing, honestly.
Oh gosh, that gives me goosebumps. Yes. And I mean, it's completely reasonable to think about how you would feel that. And just like, oh my goodness, the rug was literally taken out from underneath you, I'm sure. And this is something you've got, you know, it was your safe place for so many years.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting, but it was also felt very destined. You know, this spiritual search, you know, was something that is probably one of the most valuable things that I've ever experienced in my life.
Wow. And so when you were traveling and kind of going on the spiritual search, did you go by yourself?
Oh yeah. Well, I had a friend, Stefan, who I really was sort of in love with, actually. And we started the search together. And it's so funny where you start, right? Yeah. And I remember I had a book called Adventures Beyond the Body. And it was about a man who had experienced out-of-body experiences. And Stefan read it. And he called me one time. And I was on a drug trip, I remember. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so excited, Jen. You have to read this book. And so I got home and I read it. And it's like somehow when a book affects you, like it's like all of a sudden it's like I'd been living in black and white and my world turned on and everything made sense. And so we started by going to the Robert Monroe Institute in Virginia and doing, you know, exploring out-of-body experiences. You know, I went swimming with dolphins, I did trance dance, you know, all of these things for a while. So it was quite a unique search, but with him a little bit, but then all on my own. I went to India alone, the whole thing.
Wow. I mean, that in itself is a whole other episode, I'm sure. And the people you met and the experiences and just being able to go on that adventure. And talk about timing, because you went there doing that, not knowing what, you know, would come in the future. And I'm excited to ask if that, what you did then helped you to get through your time in prison, but we'll wait on that. So you realized that things were going crazy. Oh shit. And so the day that the federal agent showed up on your door, what was that like?
Well, first of all, I want to say, in a way, it's so interesting what our psyches do. Those 3 months, literally, I buried my head in the sand, like nothing's going to happen. And at one point, Dale had said, oh, the Mexicans have a place for you in Mexico. You can go to Mexico. And I'm like thinking, what, are you kidding me? I mean, like, what's that? Like, no way in hell am I going to Mexico. So I just basically did nothing. And the funny thing is, oh my God, I think I got myself arrested. So I had called the day before the storage unit. Well, actually, there was an attorney involved on our case, and he was quite a high-end attorney in LA. I really liked him. and I'd driven with him once, and he knew about this, and he was like sort of giving me money to be okay. Well, anyways, the point is, I had called him and asked him what I should do with the storage unit, and he said, just call and cancel it. So the DA had been watching the storage unit, right? They knew everything. They had my name. They were waiting. And I called the storage unit, and I said to her, I want to cancel it. And I did have a few furniture items in it. And so she said, well, why? And you have things in it. Don't you want your things? I said, I don't want my things. And she kept pushing me because she knew who I was. And out of frustration, I said, I want to cancel it because I'm going out of the country. And like, that's the worst thing you can say. The worst thing, like, it was God's funny joke. It's like, why did I lie and say that? So the next day, the DEA came to the office and arrested me because they thought I was fleeing. I wasn't.
Yeah.
So, you know, but what's super cool about this moment is I remember waking up the morning that I was arrested, and I remember I had my journal because I journal every morning and map out my day. And I wrote at the top of it, well, one thing I wrote was, you know, if the trees are screaming, and if a tree falls in the forest, do you hear it? The trees are screaming, we can't hear them. So it's this poetic thing. And then I thought to myself, this day feels familiar. Like, is it somebody's birthday? What am I missing? You know, why, like, whose birthday is it? It was like I was meeting my destiny. It was just the weirdest thing.
Wow.
So I felt like I had a premonition of my arrest.
Wow. And in hindsight, when you're trying to figure out why in the world you said you were going out of country, maybe, you know, so, you know, subconsciously you were just ready to pay your dues, be done, and move on to the next chapter of your life, not knowing all of this amazing stuff is going to come from being incarcerated, which we are getting to. So, oh my goodness. Okay. So you found out, okay, you were arrested, and you literally, you actually didn't, you waited for trial for 2.5 years, right?
I did, not inside prison. I mean, I went in to the MCC downtown, the federal holding facility, was there for 2 days. I had to advocate to get me out on bond because they said I was going to flee because I had a 7-year visa from India unused on my passport.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to flee. So then literally 2.5 years, you know, I basically spent it, you know, I was on house arrest until my restrictions got less and less. And I moved to LA. I was running a whole real estate investment office. Like, I poured my heart into working, but at the same time I was being stalked and bribed by other people in the conspiracy because they didn't want me to cooperate. So they were giving me cash. And so it became a whole thing. And it ended up that my ex-boyfriend, Dale, had actually turned himself into the government before I cooperated because I didn't cooperate for the first 9 months. And he ended up wearing a wiretap on everybody. And then an indictment came out, and there were probably about 36 people on my case. And because we also had a case in New York, another 36 people. So it took a long time, 2.5 years for me. You know, I was facing 10 years in the beginning, and then the best I could get was 7. And then finally, when I ended up cooperating, I had a deal for 3.5 years.
Wow. Jen, that time for 2.5 years from the time you were released, and I know you were on house arrest, and it sounded like you poured into real estate and things like that. How did you sleep? How did you eat? How mentally, you know, sometimes the waiting is the hardest part, but I mean, how in the world was that?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, it was awful. It was probably the hardest time of my life. I didn't eat. You know, it's interesting because, you know, like now I'm like, oh, I'd love to lose some weight. But at that moment, that feeling of not being able to eat because you're so upset is not a fun feeling. I lost a lot of weight. I was, you know, I was smoking cigarettes and, you know, drinking wine and, you know, not able to take care of myself physically, which is usually where it goes when I'm upset, because I was in so much pain and grief. I thought I had an ulcer. I went to the doctor. It wasn't an ulcer. You know, so physically I was having ailments show up. And I think, you know, if it wasn't for my spiritual practice, because I dived in deep, you know, that even though I was having a hard time, that helped keep me grounded because I knew there was a purpose. I knew there was something bigger, but I felt just such a sense of unsafety. You know, I couldn't make new friends. My life felt like it was on pause. It was, if anything, I was going through grief of that I had put myself in this situation. I had hurt myself.
Yeah, for sure. During that time, I mean, you never had gone to prison. Obviously, everybody wonders about things they haven't done yet. So, you know, did you have anybody to reach out to or talk to, or anyone that has been on the inside who can help to address some of your fears, or, things that you were just uncertain of?
Great question, because no, I didn't. Until when I was finally sentenced, I was like, thank God I'm sentenced. And then I started researching online, and I saw that there were a few men called federal prison consultants. And there's only two at the time. One was an attorney named Alan Ellis, and one was a man named David Novak. And David Novak was a white guy who he committed insurance fraud, and he went to federal prison. And now he was helping people prepare to prison. He'd written a book called Downtime, and I called him and I met him. And I'll tell you, just sitting with him made such a difference. It was incredible. He was a gift from God. That's why I work with women now in the same way, because I received so much value from him. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of money because I'd spent it all on attorneys and things like that. And it was really interesting because he said to me, I'm doing a documentary for Court TV. If you let me film you and surrendering to prison, then we can do a trade. So I actually I actually for a long time had my surrender to prison on a DVD. So I could rewatch it over and over.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And I mean, and just hearing you say, you sat down with him and you immediately felt, oh my gosh. I mean, you're still going to prison, obviously, but at least you got to sit down and talk to somebody and have somebody hear your fears and your thoughts and tell you what it's like.
Yeah, it was a precious thing to have. It really helped me. Thank goodness. Yeah.
So then you go into prison, you do your time, and you kind of talk a little bit about the woman and the people that you met, and just kind of where your heart and your passion, this fire, the spark started, and it just kept growing. So talk to us about a little bit about your experience and the people who you met.
Yeah, when I went in, it wasn't easy to be in prison. There was a huge amount of negativity that hovers over the compound. And, when you think about it, everybody inside prison, most people don't want to be there. So you're dealing with the energy of people being where they're being forced to be, basically, and told where they have to be. So that was a daily experience. And to get through that, I worked the book, The Course in Miracles, which is another saving grace. But what surprised me was I was in one federal prison, and in this prison there were 1,600 women on the compound, and it was overcrowded, and we would have more beds put up and beds out in the open, and we called bus stops and then double bus stops, and every 10 days I'd see more new commits coming in, and short timers with 2-year sentences. There were women in there on 20-year sentences that were now down to 10, and all of this was for nonviolent crime. I was in a federal prison camp, and I couldn't believe all the women that were locked up on these lengthy, nonviolent, mandatory minimum drug sentences. And I was blown away. And the truth is that 95% of the women were mothers. And once I realized that and saw how hard it was to mother from prison, and saw how many women were locked up for long sentences in a prison camp for what? It just like, what's happening here? I was my eyes were open to a world I had no idea existed, and I knew something. I needed to do something.
Oh my goodness. And then having your own experience of that time waiting to get into prison and figuring out, seeking, trying to understand what that's going to be like. And then on the inside, now you have these whole other experiences. While you're going through this and you're discovering this and making these relationships, did you ever struggle with feeling like you weren't sure about your future, with feeling about what am I going to do? Where am I going to go from here? Or did you just feel that fuel in your heart and that guided you?
Well, what happened is when I was inside, now, when I was arrested, I had, another, amazing man beside me who was my boyfriend. And even though we weren't together romantically as much when I surrendered to prison, he was by my side. So through dialoguing with him and some other incredible women in my life, one Mo Ross, another woman, Barbara, who would write me all the time. We had email at the time. I began to be encouraged to dream about what I wanted to create in my life. And so I started allowing myself, especially when you're locked up, and I knew I had a short time, all the things that I hadn't done, that I said I would do, that I wanted to do. And so I was percolating, sort of dream weaving and dream making when I was inside. And I guess a part of me wasn't scared. Like, of course I was. You know, I didn't know I was going to go out, hit the ground running, and I had no idea I'd be where I'm at now. I had no idea. I was just allowing myself to dream.
I love that, because you use a very interesting word. You allowed yourself to dream. And I mean, even in the confines of prison, and I mean, there's prison, and then, you know, some people are in situations where, you know, they don't feel like they can dream anymore, or they don't allow themselves to dream. And it's amazing what can happen from the freedom of allowing yourself to dream, even when you're in prison. I think that is so huge, what you just said right there.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, even, you know, come on, I'm 51. You know, when people, a lot of times when we get older, we lose the art of dreaming, and it's hard for us to grab onto that. So I was blessed with people who encouraged that in me, and I just took it and ran.
Oh, that's so good. And I'm sure, did you have like some of the friends that you made in prison and women who were getting to know you, did they want to come and dream with you?
You know, it's interesting. You know, I began writing when I was in prison, writing poetry, and I was also teaching Pilates mat class. So, you know,
Wow.
and we would, yeah, I loved it. I loved it. But we'd walk the compound together, you know, in pairs, or go to church together, like girls, women like to do. We always did things together. I had some very close friends, and I think it's through those conversations that we inspired each other, or hopefully I gave them a sense of it. You know, I learned from them as much as they learned from me.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Okay, so that takes us to when you're released from prison and what you've been working on the past decade over. Talk to us about what you do now and how
Yeah.
you help serve women and men going into
Yeah.
prison.
Yeah, and I'll speed this forward quickly. But when I got out, you know, it wasn't easy when I got out, and I just want to share that I had family support, and yet it was still not easy. I had changed, you know, even in 17 months, I was different, and people expected me to be the same, and I wasn't.
How?
But it took me.
Can you put a finger
Um,
on how you changed?
You know, I don't know. Like, I wasn't, when I got out of prison, I felt very grounded. I was taking things one step at a time, and it wasn't fast enough. It's like
Okay.
people in the world were moving so quickly, they wanted me to catch up. Why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you doing more? And I had settled into myself, into a sense of peace.
Mm,
And that was different, and a different type of trust. So that was one thing. And so that's definitely one way it showed up. People who, it's really hard for anybody to understand what incarceration is like, or what I've been through, if they weren't inside prison too. So there was still a little bit of a disconnect, but nobody could really understand. So that's basically what it was. So it took me about 3 years. I knew I wanted to help, but I didn't know how. I also needed to take care of myself. I came out in 2008 during the downturn of the economy, so jobs were tough.
yeah.
No real estate, you know, so I'd get a job, their business would fail. But I was determined to not give up. So I started writing my story. I spent 2 years writing my memoir. And then I finally found a publisher and got it published in 2013. And that really started the momentum. I started speaking in kids, you know, to kids in high schools and middle schools all over San Diego County with another nonprofit, sharing my story, which I love doing. And then I just kept meeting person after person. And I ended up taking my book that was published and meeting a woman. And together we ended up writing a 14-month curriculum, which was to transformational work to help empower at-risk teen girls, and then later women coming out of prison, to make positive, good choices, or to realize they had a choice, that they could recreate their life. So we founded a nonprofit with this program. I've done my we're on our third program with San Diego U.S. Federal Probation, which is who arrested me. So I work with women coming out of prison. I also have been working with women going into prison as a federal prison consultant, like David Novak did. Yeah. And more recently, I've transferred all my energy also into men, which I never thought I would do. And I've been going inside of a men's prison for 3 years until we couldn't with COVID. But we produced the first TEDx inside of a prison in San Diego, and we've done that twice in a row.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I know that was the fast forward version, but my goodness. I mean, first of all, your memoir, Trafficking, The Good Life. I cannot wait to dive into it and read it. And I know I want to say thank you because you are gifting some of our community, the first 5 people to reach out to you, that memoir. And I think that just reading through some of the reviews and what people are saying, just the authentic, true story, and giving us such an insight into what it's like inside prison, and then how it is. I mean, everything that's going through your head, you know, and there's not enough time in an hour to talk about anything, but I mean, listening to your TEDx speeches and things like that, amazing, because I think there are so many people that can go through their own timelines in life and even say, you know, that could have been me. Easily, that could have been me. Yeah. And now that you have taken so much adversity and you're literally turning it into a legacy, and you're just trying to help so many people, words cannot say thank you enough, because I mean, you're putting out the good from a situation that you learned from, which is incredible.
Well, and I just want to say, when, you know, it's really hard for me to thank you for saying that. It's hard for me to take that in, because I feel like, I always like to tell people, you know, I feel like I fell into my calling. Rather than having a mission. I didn't plan on going out of prison and making prison all about my life. It just felt like something that's beyond me. So something's coming through me. It's not me doing it. It's not me doing it. And I receive just as much back from the work.
Oh, I can completely understand that, for sure. As much as I can, but that's incredible. And what you guys are both giving to each other too. Yeah, absolutely. So the one thing you mentioned about fear, which I really thought was interesting, was that you nurture it. And I thought that was so important to talk about. What do you mean by you nurture fear, and what's an example about how you can do that? Because we talked to a lot of people about fear and how you deal with that, and what does that look like? How do you get through it? And yes, it's a feeling and it's an emotion, and, you know, it doesn't have to, you know, it's something that's inside of you, but you can get through it. So how do you nurture it?
Yeah. And I just want to share that, you know, it's interesting because I still get bouts of anxiety, and I don't know where it comes from or why. And so I've had to learn how to, you know, work with how to live with it when it comes. And I think it's important. So many people want to push through it or get rid of it. And I don't think fear ever leaves us. We just need to change our relationship to it. So when I'm feeling anxiety or fear, I really try my best to slow down my day, slow down my life. I know it's not a time to make decisions. I know it's a time to go in and what do I need to do? Because right now it's like, I need to go into Jen's hospital and take care of her, you know, and it's like, okay, take a hot bath, place some incense, stick on a Netflix movie, you know, eat some nurturing food, take a walk. Like, what does Jen need without no judgment? You know, if it's like, well, Jen needs a bottle of wine, well, I'm going to do that because it's not making myself wrong. No judgment, you know, and asking myself what I need, you know, asking myself what I'm afraid of. And because I really realize it's an illusion, but I'm not okay. I'm not okay. So I want to mother me.
I love it. It's so good. Yeah, give yourself and give fear what it needs sometimes. And I think the point that you make about not rushing into making decisions or doing anything rash. I mean, I'm definitely a driver, and I do better when I'm moving and moving and moving. But I have come to learn that making those decisions when you feel fear and anxiety so much just sets you up for more oh shit moments. So.
Oh my God. I have crashed and burned so many times. I'm like, no more.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah. This isn't working. So I got to try the opposite. I can't move.
Exactly. and do not send a text when you're in fear. Do not send a text. No more texting when I'm feeling this way. Yeah.
No life decisions, no major, you know.
I'm in my own quarantine moment.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, gosh, it's been such a great conversation with you. Share with us a little bit about, I know that you coach men and women to get up on the stage and do have their own TEDx talks and things like that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, it's really neat because, you know, through getting sort of my world of prison and TEDx merged together at one point, and, you know, I became close friends with who used to be the organizer of San Diego TEDx. And, you know, then I did my own TEDx talk, and then I put on a TEDx inside prison. And then, you know, one of the men that I used to work with inside prison got involved in a company called the Idea Collective, an amazing company. And for a year, I did consulting work with them where I helped with idea making and helping people get on the stage. And, you know, I stopped working for them. That sort of, you know, ended at the end of February. And now, you know, I'm working as a consultant doing that. So, you know, I really, I enjoy and I'm good at helping people see what their idea is and how to position it to really capture the eye of a TEDx organizer and to help them get there. So I've heard hundreds and hundreds of ideas. So I love doing this. And I just get a thrill out of getting another client on that TEDx stage. It's really, really fun.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And I'm sure taking them from the first conversation they have with you to, this is kind of what I'm thinking in this, and then you can pull out different things and help guide them and get a clear path. That has to be so awesome.
I love it. And then, you know, sometimes, you know, I coach people once they have gotten a yes to get on stage. I'll help them with their speech and their talk. And I mean, so much joy in that too.
Yeah. Oh, that is so cool. I love it. And, you know, we talk about, and I know that, you know, this is a woman's platform, but we definitely like to thank and raise up and definitely acknowledge the strong men who stand behind all of us women. Absolutely. And so just want to put it out there that Jen works with both men and women. So if somebody wants to reach out to you or knows somebody who's struggling or who's in a situation or who wants to talk on stage, how does somebody go about reaching out to you? What does that process look like?
You know, at this point, I mean, I am on Facebook and Instagram, but I think, emailing me is a great way to reach me. So again, I'm on Facebook. My Instagram's at Jen Myers 198. My website is www.jennifermyers.co, but they can also email me at jenmyers198@gmail.com.
Awesome. Okay, cool. We'll definitely include all of that in our recap and our blog posts and everything. And we do talk a lot about people who empowered you throughout your life and things, and you gave a shout out to your mama. So is there anything special you want to share?
You know, my mom passed away in 2010. So she had a hard journey, and she was always my cheerleader and always believed in me, always believed in me. You know, she's the one that told me that I should, you know, publish my book, even when some other family members were not wanting me to put the truth out to the world. So I definitely want to give a shout out to her. I love her. I feel her around me all the time. I love her and I miss her, but yeah.
Awesome. Yes,
Thank
you're
you.
so welcome. Oh my goodness. That's so important in all of our own lives, and to acknowledge that in others. So that's so special. We often talk about the red bra moments, and red bra moments come in all different shapes and sizes and things like that. Some people wear them outside more bolder, some are underneath, but it's always within you to rise up and get through that adversity and overcome those obstacles. This is going to might be a tough one for you, but do you have a certain time that really kind of is apparent in your red bra moment vault, so to speak?
Well, I think, you know, when I was inside prison, you know, there were a few really scary days for me. And one was, you know, when, there was a really bad fight, like a woman hit somebody with a lock in her sock. And another one was when somebody died in her cube and the ambulance came to the yard like 3 times. And what started happening for me is that these parts of myself, the deepest parts of myself that I'd forgotten about, like my writing and my art, started appearing for me to be okay. So like, it's like the biggest, deepest parts inside of me rose up, and I started writing poetry when weird things like that would happen, and making art in my cube every night from the letters that I received. So to me, those were my red bra
I love it.
parts of me that came
Yeah,
up.
I love it. That is so cool because you talk about those parts rising up that you've forgotten about until something
Oh,
like that brought them out. And that is just,
yeah.
that speaks volumes. That's awesome.
Thank
Jen, thank
you.
you so much for joining us. We think you're absolutely amazing and cannot wait to read your book, and so glad we've connected and you're in our Red Bra community. We close every one of our episodes with a quote, and the quote that we picked out for you is: a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. Winston S. Churchill. And I think that even though you went into things and you are very authentic and genuine in saying, this, I had no idea where I was going or what I was doing, you took every step for what it was and you turned it into what you felt like you were led to. So you're amazing, so keep on rocking it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for what you're doing with the community and empowering women. And I am just honored to be on here. This conversation, just loved it. Loved it. I can feel your heart. And I'm just, again, honored to be on here. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you. And to all of our viewers and our Red Rock community out there, thank you guys for tuning in with us once again. Go and follow Jen, hang out with her, let her inspire you, share your stories. We're here to lift and build each other up. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Follow us over at the Red Bra Project on Instagram. That's where most of our stuff happens. And of course, you can catch all of the recaps on our YouTube channel and our blog. Everybody have a great night and thank you all. We appreciate you so much. Bye-bye.